Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. We're glad you decided to check us out. God has a specific message of hope for your life and mine today. So listen up.
I'm Devin, and I know Jen through her sister Michelle, and I'm going to talk Jen into signing up on eHarmony, and that's how she met Mark. It was what took a little bit of convincing, but it was definitely worth it. He's a wonderful guy. He's the only guy she met on eHarmony. He was one of her very first matches, and the only one that she met from there. He was a keeper right from the start.
I pray that God will give you strength and help you throughout the remainder of your lives to be able to keep the vows to the Lord and to each other, the vows that you will be exchanging this evening.
For richer or poorer,
In sickness and in health,
in sickness and in health,
according to God's holy ordinance.
According to God's holy ordinance.
And thereto I give you my love.
And thereto I give you my love.
I guess I should probably thank, what's his name? The eHarmony guy. Gosh, this is just so amazing.
Had superstars in our church. That was Mark and Jen Evans, who met each other on eHarmony.com, and eHarmony produced that video to show their wedding. Mine was on the beach and much simpler, and maybe yours was too, but wasn't that magical? I mean, you watch that and it just, she looks so beautiful and he looks so handsome, and here's all the bridal party, and it just looks amazing. I don't know about you, but when I started dating the woman that now is my wife and has been for 42 years, all I could think of was Valerie. All of my attention was focused on her. Every day I just woke up and I thought, man, I can't wait to be with her for the rest of my life. I just love her and I want to spend time with her and I just want to be together and talk together forever and ever. And when you're dating, that's pretty typical, is you meet that someone that you know is the one. And for some of you, it takes a really long time to find them. I found her when she was 15, so I started early. But, you just know, and once you know that's the one for me, then they become the whole focus of your world. And if you're a lady, then all of your girlfriends start saying, she doesn't hang around with us as much. All she talks about is him. All she wants to do is be with him. As if that were a bad thing. And if you're a guy, then your friends are saying, hey, you want to go shoot a pool? No, man, I've got a date. Hey, you want to go to this game? No, I've got a date. Our focus, everything about us is focused on that person that we want to spend our life with. You love taking long walks together. You love having long talks together. And then one day you drop down to your knee and you pop the question and she says yes. And the next thing you know, the music starts and everyone in the church stands to their feet. And as the wedding march begins, you come marching into the church. And as you walk into the church, all eyes are on you. As you walk into the church, even for all the other people there, you're their focus. Mark, I have to say you look even more beautiful than in the video. You stand in front of a crowd, but you don't even notice that they're there. You hear the words of the minister, and you kind of hear what he says. You know that you're just supposed to say, I do and I will at some point. But you hold hands and you look into each other's eyes. And you feel like you're the only people in the room. In fact, you may feel like you're the only people in the world. Nothing else matters. And the congregation sits back down as they get prepared to hear you exchange your vows. And you say those vows to each other and you mean every word of it, even though most of it is about things that haven't happened to you yet, like the sickness part and the poorness part and a lot of things that are common in marriage. But you exchange those rings and you promise to be together forever. And then you head off to the reception and you do the dance and you enjoy the toast and you head off for your honeymoon. And the honeymoon is amazing. And you really believe that nothing could ever come between the two of you. And then something happens. It's a 4-letter word. Life. Life happens. And so you just start getting busy about it. You're this new family unit, this new couple. And so what does every couple want? They want a house. They want to buy a house. And I don't know if you've noticed, but with lots of young couples today, they expect their first house to be bigger than mom and dad's, even though it took mom and dad 20 or 30 or 40 years to buy up and save for this house. And so they want the biggest house they can possibly get. They want it to be really, really nice. And even though it's just the two of them, it's a really big house. And there's nothing worse than having a big, beautiful new home than having a big, beautiful, empty new home. And so you've got to start furnishing that house. You've got to get furniture. Sometimes it's kind of cheap, like ours was. And so now you've got the house furnished, and you come home at night and you look at each other and your voices bounce around the walls, and it just seems so quiet inside that big house. So what does every couple get next? A dog. You got to have a dog. The bigger, the better. He got to pick the dog. Now there's 3 problems that enter your marriage at this point. You got to pay for the house, you got to pay for the furniture, and you got to pay for the dog. And you thought buying the dog was the expensive part. No. It's the shots. It's taking them to the vet bills. And then every time they have a cold, you got to take them back to the vet. And then the dog food. And the expenses just go on. And the mortgage goes up. And the furniture has got rooms to goes 20 a year. You don't owe anything, but you really do owe it. And so something hits both of you really strong. We got to pay for all this stuff. And that means we got to start really focusing on our career. And so he wants to start climbing the corporate ladder. He's had a good job, but he wants to just climb up the rungs. He wants to be an executive superstar at his company. And her career, she's a medical sales rep, and so she's got to start traveling with her job. So it takes her out of town a lot. And all of a sudden, he's spending all these hours at work and trying to build his career, and she's spending all this time trying to build her career and traveling, and it almost seems like their paths just barely cross at times. And they're working harder and harder and harder to pay for all the stuff. And then what happens? A baby, a blessing from God. The Bible says children are a blessing. This is one that kind of makes accidents, if you know what I mean. No. And so you gotta take care of the baby. You gotta get all the baby furniture, and you're so excited about that baby. I mean, literally, your world revolves around that baby until the next one comes along, and the next one comes along, and the next one comes along. This in no way is reflective of Mark and Jen having 4 girls. We just happen to work out that way. And when you have those children, when the first one comes along, you think there can't be anything more amazing in this world than this precious baby. And the baby cries and you jump, and the baby whimpers and you jump, and the baby's hungry and the baby needs change, and your whole world starts revolving around that baby. And then as you have another and another, however many God gives you, your whole world begins to revolve around the kids. And that's just the beginning. What do kids require? Lots and lots of stuff. You've got to buy them so many diapers, so many clothes, and there's always a new cuter outfit. And if Grandma and Grandpa didn't get it, then you've got to go and just find more and more things for the kids. So she's just getting overwhelmed already. She decided to stay home with the kids, put her career on hold for a while and focus on the kids. But she's home all the time, and it feels like the hardest job in the world. And the reason it feels like the hardest job in the world, it is. I hate it when women say, I don't work. I mean, no, you may not work outside the home. That doesn't mean you don't work. And so her world has become the kids and taking care of them and nurturing them and getting their shots and taking them to the doctors and doing all those things. Now, we've got a problem over here because he now feels the burden of making twice as much money because, we don't have her income anymore. Now it's all on me. And now it's not just on me. We've got all these kids that we've got to take care of, and kids are expensive. And so he just starts working harder and harder and harder, which means overtime, and it means taking any promotion he can get and doing whatever it takes to try to get to that next level so he'll get that next raise or he'll get that next bonus. And man, he's about to break under the pressure. She's about to break at home. He's about to break under the pressure at work. And he's got to do something to relax. He's got to find a hobby. He's got to find something so that he can just unwind. And so he starts spending the little bit of off time that he has away from work out doing the fun things that he likes to do. Because after all, he deserves a break. He works so hard, he deserves a break. And she's going home and saying, I'm going to break him if he doesn't get here and help me with these kids and help me around the house. And then the kids hit that magic age called school. And so once school starts, you got to get all the school supplies. You got to get the backpacks. You got to get, the teacher gives you a list. You know, when I was a kid, you know what the list was? Here's a pencil, here's some paper. That was it. It was pretty simple back then. But now you've got to follow the list. You've got to buy all that stuff, and you've got to buy it for all the kids. And no sooner do the kids get started in school than they say, Mommy, Daddy, I want to play sports. I want to play sports. And so some of them want to play football, because they never all want to play the same sport. The kids, I don't know if you've noticed this, children calculate, they look at the schedule and they say, how many different things can we pick that would put our parents in different places all at the same time? Let's do that. And so they go and they play soccer and they play football and they play basketball, all kinds of sports activities. And the term for women, it came from about 1991, the term was made famous, soccer mom. Because moms all over America started driving their kids to soccer games, soccer practice, soccer practice, soccer game, soccer game, soccer practice. And then mom finally gets a dream come true. Minivan. Minivans are dreams come true for car manufacturers. That's the only people. That's the only people. And so mom now becomes a shuttle service. She's like the limo driver, except she doesn't get paid and she doesn't get tipped and she doesn't get any thanks. But now she's running the kids here and there. And who knows what we're having to eat, because I don't even have time to think about that. Don't even have time to think about that. And kids love sports, but a lot of sports are just seasonal. So what do you do the rest of the time? Well, how about dance classes? Got to go to dance classes. Every girl has to take dance classes. Some guys have to take dance classes. And then what do you do for the others? They say, I want to learn how to play an instrument. I want to learn how to play an instrument. And so you've got to set up you got the music lessons, you got the dance classes, and then, oh wait, we're back to soccer and football, and we're back to all these things. And your world literally becomes revolving circle, spinning out of control all around your kids. All around your kids. And we haven't even mentioned church yet. We've just talked about all these other common things, but we haven't even talked about church yet. You got to get the kids ready. I mean, you grew up in church. You want your kids to grow up in church. And so you've got to get the kids ready. You've got to get them dressed. You've got to get them to church. And then they keep telling you need to serve in ministry. And so he grabs hold of a ministry project and she grabs hold of a ministry project. And of course, it's not the same ministry, so they got different times. They got to be different places. Notice what's happened. Notice what's happened. They're both overloaded, completely overloaded, overwhelmed, and notice that they've grown so far apart. So far apart. It didn't happen quickly. It happened step by step, week by week, month by month, year by year. And I called this marital drift. You know, it's easy to notice when something dramatic happens and you can deal with it quickly. But when something gradual happens, it's much harder to notice. It's much harder to kind of plan as to what to do about it. And everything we've talked about have been good things. We haven't talked about the bad things that can come into marriage that can really drive you apart. We haven't even talked about those. These are all good things. These are all good things that we were doing for our kids. These are all good things that we were trying to do for our family. All good, honorable things. But 20, 25, 30 years later, they don't even know each other anymore. They don't know who each other is. They look and they don't have anything in common anymore. And that's why so many couples get divorced after 20 or 30 years of marriage. That used to be unheard of. Unheard of. People thought if you could make it for 20 years, you could make it forever. But what happens is if our world and our marriage revolves around things that aren't God's priority for us, then once those things change, like kids grow up, kids move out, we look at each other and think, I like you, but I'm not sure I even love you anymore. I'm not sure I even know you anymore. And so often, especially in churches, so often it looks good on the outside. We pretend. We're so self-righteous. We pretend like we've got it all together. And what happens is, the outside looks good, but gradually our marriage went from the front burner to the back burner when the kids were born, and then we turned the burner off completely, and then we put it in the refrigerator, and then we put it in the freezer. And let me tell you, it's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to take a marriage from the freezer and get it back on the front burner. We're going to talk about how to do it in a few minutes, but it's really, really hard to do that. And so that just seems like too big of a gap, too many changes, too many problems now. And so it seems like it would be easier to just split up. Oh, we'll still be friends. We'll always be friends. But to split up and try to start all over with someone new. Let's give Mark and Jen a big hand for helping here. You guys are awesome. Mark makes his own fishing poles. He's a devoted fisherman. So I want to share two things with you today. I want to share, first of all, how to avoid marital drift. When we were in our pre-worship meeting, Anne-Marie, are you 14 now, Anne-Marie? Yes. You sure? Okay, 14. 14. Use both fingers and part of one foot? Yeah, got it. 14. And Anne-Marie's like, well, I don't need this. And I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because it's so much easier to avoid something than to try to repair it later. Guys, I love speaking on marriage. I love it when Valerie and I do seminars and we do date night classes. And I love speaking on marriage. And there's two reasons why I love speaking on marriage. One is because we have a really, really good marriage. And the other is, we've made every mistake you can possibly make. From the very beginning, we've made every mistake you can possibly make. So I really do get it. And I wish I'd known these things. My parents were one of these that we just saw. Pillars of the church, Sunday school teacher, youth group leader, head of the finance team, and got divorced after 29 years. 29 years. Everybody looked at our family. Oh, that's just the perfect family. Every time the church doors are open, they're there. But this happened. I want to help you avoid these things. If you're not married yet, or if you've just been married for a short time, a few years, I want to help you avoid these things. And if you have already experienced some or all of these, and maybe you can't even see, you're so far apart now, you're like in the deep freeze. I want to teach you from God's word and God's principles how to fix that. How to fix that. So here's how to avoid marital drift. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. We've got to go back to the beginning to see God's original design, his original plan and purpose for couples. And it says, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. It doesn't say you and your kids become one. It doesn't say you and your career become one. It doesn't say you and your hobbies or you and your friends or you and your possessions become one. It doesn't even say you and your ministry become one. It says a husband and a wife pledge before God to be married for the rest of their lives, and God wants us to become one. And so the priorities that you see in Scripture are this. God is always first. Anything we ever talk about, there's just that underlying assumption that we know God is number one. He's to be the top priority in our life. Now, you might be here and you think, well, he's not the top priority. That's the place to start. That's the place to start. In March, we're going to have a whole conference here to help you do that, to help you put God as top priority in your life and let him transform your life. But that's where we start. God is our number one priority. Then if you're married, your spouse is number two, not the kids. Your spouse is number two. Then your kids, then your career, or if you're in ministry, your ministry. And, you know, it seems so obvious, but good people, even great people, great men of God, get these in the wrong order. Andy Stanley is my favorite pastor, favorite communicator. He pastors a church out of North Georgia. They've got 30 different locations and like 38,000 people coming to those locations. And Andy grew up in a Christian home. Andy's dad loved God. Andy's mom loved God. Andy got to see this wonderful marriage and this wonderful family. And his father was a pastor. And in fact, his father, Charles Stanley, is probably one of the most well-known pastors in America. He's been on TV for as long as almost my whole life, probably, and on Christian radio. And he's a great man of God who's devoted his whole life to God. But at some point, ministry took the place in God's priority with his wife. And his marriage started to crumble. And then they ended up not at the altar getting married, but at the courthouse getting divorced. He's still a great man of God. But Andy saw that. And Andy's like, okay, that's never going to happen to me. It's kind of what I said when my parents got divorced. It screwed me up so bad. It wounded me so bad. It made me choose so many bad things to try to cope with it. To just go out and get drunk, go out and get high, just do anything I could to not have to deal with my parents' problems. That it made me say, that is never going to happen to us. Even though we got married the wrong way and the wrong time, had nothing going for us, I bet there was not a person there that thought we would make it. But the pain I had seen, I said, I want to avoid that. I'm not going to let that happen. And Andy saw the same thing. And so, you know Andy's line, I love this. He says, my church, now picture this, 38,000 people. That's a pretty significant church. He goes, my church can always find another pastor, but my wife can't find another first husband. So she's going to be the priority. And when their kids were young, he'd say to her, what do you need from me? She goes, I really need you to come home about 4 o'clock. She says, that's when everything goes crazy. That's when the toys are everywhere. The kids haven't had their naps. It's time for dinner. I don't know what to cook. Everything's bad during that time. So Andy said, okay, I'll do that. He would get up and go meet with people at 5 in the morning when he had to have meetings for his church. And his church started huge. But he said, I'm going to make my wife and I'm going to make our kids next priorities right after God. I'm not going to get ministry confused with its priority with marriage. And so Andy does everything he does. His staff at his church, they're not allowed to work overtime. They're not, like, everything they do is geared towards helping everyone on staff, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people on staff, have good marriages and good families. And so it's so important from this verse, Genesis 2, that we are joined together, that we become one flesh. It's so important to recognize as parents that our home is a permanent place for us. It's not a permanent place for our children. Our home is a permanent place for Valerie and I, but it was only a temporary place for our children. And so a parent's job isn't to give their kids everything in the world. The parent's job isn't to let the world revolve around their kids while their marriage suffers. A parent's job is to prepare your kids to leave. To leave. We always read Genesis 2:24 and we think of the man and the woman. We're the ones leaving. Yeah, but it's the parent's job to equip us to leave so that we'll be able to leave and be healthy and whole and have awesome marriages. It seems like the right thing to let our world revolve around the kids. It seems like the right thing, but it's not. It's getting God's priorities out of order. So if you're spending more time with your kids, more time taking them to guitar lessons and soccer and football and basketball and all the things that we talked about up here, if you're spending more time doing those things than you're spending on your marriage, you're probably headed for trouble. I believe the best thing we ever did for our kids when they were young was to make our marriage the top priority. They saw that. They still see it. I called my son last night. He hurt his back a week ago, and then he had other problems this week, health problems, and I heard that he had a relapse yesterday when I thought he was about to get better. And I called and I said, well, Valerie said that her mom said that her brother-in-law Daryl said that you had a relapse. And several hours later, I get a text saying we were having date night. I'm like, yes, don't answer the phone during date night. I'm so proud of that. So proud of that. The best thing we did for our kids, and the best thing any couple can do for their kids, is to model a strong, healthy marriage. Some of us have had to learn from what not to do from our parents. Far better that your kids get to learn from what to do, which is to focus on your spouse and love them and have an awesome, awesome marriage. Proverbs 5, from verse 18 and 19, says, "Rejoice in the wife of your youth. Let her breast satisfy you always. May you always be captivated by her love." On your wedding night and your honeymoon, you probably rejoiced. You were probably so satisfied, and you were just captivated by your spouse. And I want to ask you today to reject the lies that say it can't always be that way. Reject the lies that say it won't always be that good. Reject the lies that say romance just automatically diminishes. Reject the lies that say, when you get older, the fires of passion just go out. Those are self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe that, you're going to act like it and you're going to live it. But if you say, no, not with us, not with us, you're going to make it. So keep on rejoicing. Keep on being satisfied. Keep on being captivated by your spouse. Here's another verse to help us avoid marital drift, Ephesians 5:25. "For husbands, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church." How did he do it? He gave up his life for her. Guys, that means love your wives with everything you have. Love them completely. Give up your lives for them. Yesterday, I had the honor of officiating a wedding for Justin and Eni. They're members of our church here. And I told Justin, I said, "Justin, it's so much easier." And Justin's like, 12 feet tall and just, he's a man's man. Except they had on a Hawaiian lei for the wedding. Eni's from Hawaii, so he caved in on that one. But I said, "Justin, most of us men are willing to die for our wives. Most of us men are willing to take a bullet for our wives. The bigger challenge is to be willing to live for them day after day. I could be the most obnoxious husband in the world. I could treat my wife like trash, and then somebody comes up with a gun and aims it at her, and I can step over and take a bullet for her. And most guys would. It's much harder to live for her. Every day, serving, respecting, honoring, loving. You can avoid marital drift if you commit to keeping your spouse as your top priority, second only to God. You can avoid marital drift if you say, we're not going to let things die down. We're not going to let things diminish. We're going to work on our marriage. It's hard, but it's worth it. A good marriage doesn't happen easily, and you never get to the place where we've arrived. Valerie and I are doing a marriage life group right now. We did one in the fall, and we're doing another one. I'll invite you to it in a few minutes. But invariably, when we go to do a marriage seminar or a marriage series or something like that, she gets so ornery. When we go to do something, it's like we literally have gone years without fighting until you go to do a marriage Bible study. And then it's like, I mean, I put up with it. I only say those things because if you know us, you know it's all my fault. No matter what the question, what the issue, yeah, I was wrong. I married a saint, and I'm blessed. We've never reached the point, married 42 years, we haven't reached the point where you say, now we have a great marriage, we don't have to do anything anymore. No, we work on it every week. We work on it every day because we just want it to get better and better. Not only not diminish, not only keep the same, we want to get better and better and better. So what if marital drift has already happened? What do you do if this illustration that we did up here, and you might have said, I identify with that one, or I identify with that one, or maybe, man, all of these, or maybe you had a whole list in your mind a lot bigger than this. What do you do if that's already happened? What do you do if you're not even you're to the point where you've given up. You say, I just don't even want to be together anymore. What do you do? I just want to talk for a minute about how to recover. How to recover from marital drift. Whatever phase you might be in, how to recover from that. We're going to look at a verse from Hosea chapter 2. And it's kind of interesting. You know, throughout the Bible, you'll see a comparison between a husband and wife and God and the church. And so you'll see lots of comparisons, and those principles are so powerful that even when it's God speaking to the church, those principles apply to those of us that are married. And so in Hosea chapter 2, God is fed up with his people. He is ticked off. He's had it. They've rebelled. They've rejected him. They've disobeyed everything he's told them to do. They're as rotten as can be. God has continued to be perfect and holy and righteous. But his people have just messed up everything you can mess up. And so look at what he says to them, though. He's ready to just wipe them off the face of the earth. But look at what he says in Hosea chapter 2, verse 14. And now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start all over again. I'm taking her back out into the wilderness where we had our first date, and I'll court her. I'll give her bouquets of roses. I'll turn Heartbreak Valley into acres of hope, and she'll respond like she did as a young girl, those days when she was fresh out of Egypt. Even though it looked like a hopeless relationship, God said, I'm going to pursue her again. I'm going to pursue my people. I'm going to pursue my church again. God hadn't done anything wrong. They didn't deserve to have anything right. They didn't deserve his forgiveness. They didn't deserve his grace. They didn't deserve his mercy. They sure didn't deserve for him to bend over backwards and reach out to pursue them and restore a relationship that he didn't break. But that's what God does. God loves to fix broken things, and all of us are broken. And he loves to restore us. And oh, the story when our broken lives have been healed, touched, when our broken marriages have been healed and restored by the power of God. What a testimony to God. How much hope that gives to other people. When Valerie and I were married just for a few years, I came home one day. I knew something wasn't right. There was just something wasn't in sync. It wasn't bad, but something was missing. And it finally dawned on me, we weren't dating anymore. You know, as teenagers, we dated every time her parents said, yes, you can go out with that guy again, that long-haired hippie without a job from the beach. Valerie's mother still laughs when I talk about them having put up with me for 44 years. And she just kind of smiles and goes, you have no idea. But I would have dated every day. I would have dated every night. Then we got married. We were together every day. We were together every night. We had dinner together every night. We stopped dating. And so I told her, I said, I need a date night. And so we started, and originally it was once a month, and she did all the cooking because I didn't know how to cook anything. And then gradually it became once a week, and then at some point twice a week. And now our date night is like the most special time of our week. We just love. We're empty nesters. Our kids are grown and have kids. We got grandkids here, in fact, our first grandchild. No offense to the rest of you ladies, but if you look at, other than Valerie, the second most beautiful person in the room would be my granddaughter. And so we're together all the time. But being together is not the same as a date. And so we have date night twice a week. And we eat special food. We listen to special music. We sit at places. We use dishes we don't use any other time. We set that side of time that time aside because it's so important to have special, focused time on each other. Special, focused, romantic time. Dating, continuing to date, keeps your first love first. It keeps that attention on your wife. You're still captivated by her. When you're dating her, you're still captivated by her. When you're dating her, you're still finding joy in her. When you're dating her, you find satisfaction in the intimacy that just grows year after year after year. One more verse. God's talking to his people again. But the same principle applies to married couples. Revelation 2, verses 4 and 5. God says, I have this complaint against you. You don't love me or each other as you did at first. Look how far you've fallen. And God would look at you, if your marriage is on the rocks, God would look and say, you don't love each other like you did when you first got married. You don't love each other like you did back then. Look how far apart you've grown. Look how far you've fallen. So just give up and go your separate ways. It doesn't say that, does it? Turn back to me and do the works you did at first. Turn back. Turn back to your spouse. Turn back to God and do what you did at first. Remember at first how dating and all your attention, all your time, all your energy, your complete focus was on your girlfriend, your fiance, your wife. Remember how you treated them back then? Do that again. Do that again. If she says she doesn't want you to buy her flowers, she's lying. Women lie. Christian women lie. Wait, that was a woman. Okay, wait a minute. That wasn't a deep, manly voice saying it. Buy her flowers. If she says, don't get me chocolates, I don't care if she's 50 pounds overweight and she says, don't get me chocolates, get her chocolates. And on Valentine's Day, Publix has Godiva, the best brand you can get. Godiva. 30% off, $9, box of mix. And they, just a hint. Do what you used to do. Do the things that you did at the beginning of your relationship that helped you to feel so in love and to express that love that you have for each other. Go out for coffee. Go take a walk on the beach. Talk about your honeymoon. We love, you know what we do on our anniversaries? We rarely go out to restaurants. We have a lot more fun at home. I got kicked out of a restaurant once because I got a little too passionate, and so we just don't do that. No. Just kidding, Julie. On our anniversaries, we love to talk about our favorite past anniversaries. And do you remember our 10th? We were up in North Carolina, and we went to the Glendale Springs Inn, and I had called and asked for a private room, or a private table. I'd never been there before, but I thought, if you've got any table, it's our 10th anniversary, if you've got any table that's quieter than the others, we'd like that. And they said, okay. And we walk into this restaurant, and it was this one big room like this, with more noise than you could possibly imagine. I mean, just people, wall-to-wall people. And I'm like, this is not going to be romantic. And then they said, follow us. And they took us down a hallway to this little room, little private room with a fireplace. And our waitress was an exchange student from Austria. Or else she pretended to be, because it made it more romantic to have her accent that she sort of... We talk about that on our anniversaries. We talk about places we've gone on our anniversary. I couldn't get Valerie a dime until our 10th anniversary. So I'm not talking about exquisite, extravagant things. We talk about special times, special places. As you start looking back and talking about the good things, as you start looking back and talking about what first attracted you, when you start looking back and talking about what first made you fall in love and what you liked about that person, those feelings start coming back. And they start kind of pushing away all the other negative stuff that's blocked them out. And plan some romantic getaways. If you can't afford a getaway, then do a staycation. We love staycations. We've had so many staycations where we say, we're staying here, we're going to be home, can't afford to go somewhere, but we're going to pretend like we're somewhere else. Did you guys know if you go east of here, there's a beach? And people from all over the world come to see it. They do. Did you know there's a river that's over a mile wide in between here and the beach? There are so many awesome things to do here. And we'll do a staycation. We'll buy some special food to just grill out every night, so it's simple but fun food. We'll go to the beach every day. We'll rent some movies. We just have so much fun. Plan something. Say, let's commit No matter where your marriage is at, let's commit to seek the power of God, the forgiveness of God, the healing of God, God's restoration power to save our marriage. Let's commit to putting Him first. Let's commit to doing the things we used to do so that we can get those feelings back. Let's commit to no plan B, but plan A is we're going to make this work. We may have screwed up everything else, but we're going to make this work. And when you come together as a couple before God and say, God, we're broken, we're messed up, we give up, please take over our lives. If you haven't received Jesus Christ as your Savior, then start there. And don't just ask Him to save you from your sins. Ask Him to take over your life, to lead. Look where it's gotten you so far, being in charge. That's not good. Let Him be in charge. Let Him be in charge. And then as a couple say, we're committed to making it not just as good as it was in the beginning, but to make it better than it was in the beginning. And God will be there with you. We will be there to cheer you on.
Thanks for being a part of Bay West today. Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. Please feel free to check us out at baywestchurch.org, or you can follow us on Facebook at Bay West Church.